The Virtual Control Panel (VCP) window is located on the lower part of the MFD. In the standard cockpit configuration, on each MFD, one VCP is displayed, one for each pilot. The equipment controlled by the VCP through the MCP or EFCP are classified into four main categories named Format. Each one contains 2 or 3 different VCP pages. A dedicated push button on the MCP or EFCP gives access to each format. Each additional click on the same push button will cycle the VCP pages. COM format for communication with these 3 pages: VHF, HF1 and HF2 if installed. NAV format for navigation with these 3 pages: VOR-ILS, ADF and ND overlay. SURV format for surveillance with these 2 pages: transponder and TCAS. PERF format for performance with these 2 pages: takeoff data and engine outside air temperature. For COM, NAV and SURV format, and when the format requested is not already displayed, the first click on the corresponding VCP push button gives access respectively to the VHF, VOR-ILS and transponder pages. 2 additional formats, MAP and miscellaneous, exist. MAP push button gives access to the airport page for aircraft with this option. Miscellaneous push button gives access to the engine run-up performance page used for maintenance purposes. Within the same format, VCP pages can be cycled through additional clicks on the command button. A VCP page is composed of several items: tabs of a menu, buttons, and edit boxes. Each item can be selected using the 4 directional arrows of the MCP. When an item is selected, it is highlighted by a cyan outline displayed around it. VCP COM push button provides access to the following control pages: VHF, HF1, HF2 pages. Each VCP page has a default item, which is the graphic object automatically highlighted when the page is called up. For each COM page, the default item is the standby frequency. When the pilot enters a frequency using the keyboard on the MCP in a frequency edit box, it is displayed in yellow. Note, for example, if 1193 is pre-selected without the dot and the last 0 on VHF 1 standby frequency, when Enter push button is depressed, 119.300 is automatically displayed in cyan in the edit box, and the cyan highlighted box moves to the Transfer push button. If Enter push button is depressed a second time, standby and active frequencies are swapped. A frequency can be entered directly into the active edit box. For the active edit box, before becoming cyan, the frequency becomes amber for a short time after pressing Enter, whilst the transmitter tunes to this new frequency and the former active frequency is swapped to the standby. VHF frequency error is displayed amber if the digits entered do not comply with the format or the range of a VHF or HF frequency. To remove VHF frequency error message, it is necessary to select a new correct frequency. In this case, it is not possible to use Escape to return to the previous selection. If after commanding a frequency change, the frequency tuned by the VHF or HF transmitter is different from that commanded, the active frequency tuned by the VHF or HF is displayed in amber. The frequency display is dashed in case of lack of backup from VHF transmitter receiver or when the equipment test is in progress. Fail is displayed in the active frequency edit box if the status of the VHF or HF transmitter receiver is fail. Fail or a frequency in amber are never displayed in the standby edit box. TX is displayed in green during a VHF or HF transmission. The HF frequency modulation type, AM or USB, and the power emission level, low, medium, high, are displayed in green below the active frequency. The squelch level is displayed on the VCP with a cyan dot. To change the HF squelch level, the cyan edit box is moved to the new squelch level required with the MCP arrows. Enter push button is depressed to validate this selection. If 5 seconds after commanding a change of the squelch level there is a discrepancy between the command and the receiver squelch level, the cyan dot appears in amber. The cyan dot disappears in case of lack of backup on the squelch level or in case of HF equipment fault. The VCP nav push button on the MCP provides access to the following control pages: VOR ILS page, ADF page, ND overlay page. The default items are the standby frequencies and the NavAid item for the ND overlay page. Color coding and messages in the nav frequencies edit box have the same meaning as those of COM frequencies. The DME hold function can be deselected or selected by validation of the corresponding check button. If this function is selected, the DME hold NavAid frequency is displayed in green. If 5 seconds after commanding a change of the DME hold function, there is a discrepancy between the command and the state of the DME, hold or normal, DME hold and the check button corresponding to the state of the DME are displayed in amber. If the DME hold function or the DME itself or the associated VOR are unserviceable, DME hold is displayed in amber and the check button is inhibited. The auto-tuning of the VOR DME by the FMS can be selected or deselected by validation of the corresponding check button. If 5 seconds after commanding a change of the tuning mode, there is a discrepancy between the command and the state of the VOR DME, auto or manual, auto and the check button corresponding to the state of the VOR DME tuning mode are displayed in amber. If any condition to activate the auto-tune function is not satisfied, for example, if the navigation source selector on the FGCP is not on FMS 1 or 2, the check button and auto are disabled. If the auto-tune function or the VOR DME receiver is unserviceable, auto is displayed in amber and the check button is inhibited. When ADF receivers are in ADF mode and when tone is selected, the information is displayed in green below the active ADF frequency. Transition from ADF to antenna mode and selection of tone function cannot be performed using the VCP, but only through the MCDU via the RMS page. On ND overlay page, The default items are positioned on Traffic Above, Weather Radar and NavAids. Through the MCP, we can select different display modes: Traffic Above, Normal, Below, or None. Note: if 5 seconds after selecting another TCAS display mode there is a discrepancy between the command and the active TCAS option, Above, Norm, Below, or None, the active TCAS option is displayed in amber. If the backup information on the TCAS option selection is not valid, all check buttons are displayed in amber. And 3 exclusive selections, Weather Radar, Terrain, or None, are used to select the background on the ND. Note: when radar is selected, information from the weather radar is displayed on the ND. When terrain is selected, information from the Terrain Awareness and Warning System is displayed on the ND. And 2 check buttons are used to select or deselect airport or NavAids symbols on the ND. Note: if airport is selected, 40 nautical miles around the aircraft position, airports are displayed on ND. And if NavAid is selected, 160 nautical miles around the aircraft position, NavAids are displayed. VCP Serve push button on MCP provides access to the following pages: Transponder page, TCAS page. The default items are the ATC code edit box and the TCAS auto selection. On the transponder page, the flight identification Flight ID entered through the MCDU is displayed in green. 2 exclusive selection buttons, Transponder 1 and Transponder 2, enable selection of the active transponder. If 5 seconds after switching to the other transponder there is a discrepancy between the command and the active transponder, the label of the active transponder and its associated button are displayed in amber. When a transponder is unserviceable, the label Transponder 1 or 2 is displayed in amber and the selection button is inhibited. 2 exclusive selection buttons, On and Standby, enable selection of transponder mode. A check button, Alt Off, can be selected to inhibit flight level reporting. If 5 seconds after commanding a change to Alt Off, there is a discrepancy between the command and the state of the transponder Alt Off position and the associated check button are displayed in amber. If the backup of the Alt Off selector position is not available, Alt Off is displayed in amber and the selection button is inhibited. If the transponder mode is not on, the check button and Alt Off are disabled. The transponder code is entered through a text edit box. When the pilots enter a code using the keyboard of the MCP in the code edit box, it is displayed in yellow. It becomes cyan after pressing Enter, and when the code starts being transmitted by the transponder. Error is displayed if the digits inserted do not comply with the format or range of an ATC code. If after commanding a code change, the code transmitted by the transponder is different from the command, the code transmitted by the transponder is displayed in amber. The ATC code is dashed in case of lack of backup from the transponder or when the equipment test is in progress. Fail is displayed in the code edit box if the status of the transponder is failed. An ident button is used to transmit a special identification pattern. This button is displayed only if the transponder is set on. During the ident transmission, the button is deactivated and its shape is disabled. If 5 seconds after commanding an ident transmission, the transponder does not transmit it, ident is displayed in amber. On the TCAS page, 3 exclusive buttons enable selection of the TCAS mode: Auto, Traffic Advisory Only, or Standby. VCP perf push button on EFCP provides access to the following control pages. Takeoff data control page. This page access is inhibited in flight. Engine outside air temperature page. Perf init format is displayed on the upper window area of the MFD simultaneously with the VCP perf. The default items are positioned respectively on the auto position for the air temperature sensor selection and on the icing conditions button. The check button Icing Conditions is used on ground to select the weather conditions, normal or icing, expected for takeoff. If icing conditions are selected, icing in amber is displayed in the takeoff part of MFD perf pages. This selection is also taken into account by the FMS for the takeoff speeds computation. If the aircraft is not on ground, or if takeoff speeds are manually entered into the FMS, the check button Icing Conditions is inhibited. A check button Confirm Takeoff Data must be validated by pilots. Once they have checked the takeoff speeds and the weather conditions displayed in the takeoff part of the MFD perf pages. On the takeoff data page, the check button Reset Fuel Used is used on ground to reset fuel used values displayed on the EWD. Once validated, the label of the check button becomes Takeoff Data Confirmed. The takeoff speeds become active, and the FMS displays the corresponding speed bugs on the speed scale of PFDs. This check button is inhibited in flight. On the Engine Outside Air Temperature page, 3 exclusive buttons are used to select the ADC, which computes the total air temperature and the static air temperature displayed on the EWD. If Auto is selected, ADC1 is used on odd days and TAT1 is displayed in green beside the check button. ADC2 is used on even days and TAT2 is displayed in green beside the check button. If 1 second after selecting an ADC, there is a discrepancy between the command and the effective ADC source, the label of the effective ADC source and its associated button are displayed in amber. If the information on the ADC source selection is not valid or not available, all labels are displayed in amber, and 4 amber dashes are displayed beside Auto. A ground static air temperature is entered through the keyboard of the MCP to take into account a possible difference between ATIS temperature and TAT sensors. 2 exclusive buttons are used to select the static air temperature sign. The primary way to control ATC transponders is through the MCPs and VCPs. The transponders can also be controlled through the MCDUs.
Your answer is correct. Your answer is correct. Your answer is correct. Your answer is correct.